Hello everyone and welcome to episode 64 of Podcast vs Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. The lads and I are back from last week's developer interview and Q&A episode to bring season of Defiance and the first quarter of Lightfall to a close. If you're brand new to the podcast, let me give you a quick rundown. The three of us represent Hunter, that's me, Titan, that's Saint, and Warlock, that's Impetus, as we break down every PvE-orientated weapon, armor, mods, and activity in massive detail. From activity synergistic builds to weapon perk recommendations to highlighting factual data and science from our amazing community, we've got it all. Speaking of our community, you can visit DMB's Discord server not only to speak to us, but to speak to many amazing individuals, enhance your Destiny experience, and even utilise our chill LFG channel if that's more your thing. This week, we're actually doing our usual end of season episode. We'll be back in the new season with the usual array of weapons and build breakdowns. Speaking of the new season, and before I pass it over to Impetus, last week's episode was such a gem to do, but there are so many moving parts in such a short time period when it comes to producing those types of episodes, so we'll be taking next week off to recharge our batteries before we return for season 21. Alright, how are you doing, and who are we thanking today, Imp?
I'm doing well, Court. Good to be back. It has been a long week. We'll talk about that all in just a moment. It's been a very good week, but a very long week. So, yeah, I'm ready for a break, but also getting ready for a new season. I do want to shout out a lot of folks in the Destiny Massive Breakdown server who gave us a review or a critique or some words on last week's show. Your words do mean so much, and again, so many of them were very kind words, so thank you to everyone. Way too many of you to give an individualized shout out, but we saw and reacted to each and every one of them, so thank you very much for your input. You guys continue to be our biggest fans. And speaking of our biggest fans, of course, do want to give a shout out to our sponsors over on Patreon. These folks go above and beyond to support every show in the Destiny Massive Breakdown Network, and we love them very dearly. So without further ado, thank you to A Modern Viking, Askian Monk, Bryce Aroni, Deacon, I'm K Rose, Moonlight, Shazzle, Sylv, and This Moment. As a reminder, you can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the DMB Discord server. Positive, critical, and constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and so much more in the PvE sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. We also want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that supports PvE, whether that is downloading and listening to the show, discussing it in the Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to a members-only channel in Discord, behind-the-scenes info, input on the future of the show, and access to our legendary annual merch drop. And you should also check out our sibling podcasts. That's Destiny Massive Breakdowns, that dives into the nitty-gritty PvP sandbox with Ill Physics and Lego LaFlash, and Beneath Twin Suns, which is the Star Wars podcast that explains it all with Mercules and Kit Kutcha. All right, Saint, what are we talking about today, and how are you doing, sir?
Doing good. Like you said, it's been kind of a busy week. We're cooling down on season 20. We're getting ready for season 21. So we'll have a bit of a recap episode, kind of just capping off on the season, looking back at things. We are gonna start off with a little bit of discussion on the Season 21 artifact, which was highlighted in the May 18th TWAB, which is pretty exciting. Some really spicy stuff in there. We've got just a couple of highlights from our interview. We'll each kind of look back on some of our most interesting moments, favorite moments from that, and then look back on Season of Defiance, activities, weapons, new perks that it brought with it, and all of that stuff. Before we jump into what we've all been up to for the past week, just a couple of housekeeping items here. So, big developer interview. If you want some details on that, the entire episode transcript is up on DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com. Big thanks to Impetus for putting all of that together. Thanks to everybody that has supported and just been engaged with the episode. We definitely feel very privileged, right, to get these kind of interviews with the developers. So thank you for all the engagement and the support on that. Big shout out to Ads to Cross, who just put out a video on that is greatly appreciated. If you see another content creator, or if you are a content creator, you want to talk about this episode, let us know. We love all of kind of the meta commentary and feedback on that, and are always interested in that discussion. And if you got feedback about the interviews that you would like to see in the future, questions that are kind of still on your mind, feel free to hit us up. Massive Breakdown's Discord, our social DMs are usually always open. Lastly, Google Podcasts, we know, has been kind of an issue over the past few weeks. We've been experiencing some technical issues there, both for this show and for Destiny Massive Breakdowns, the podcast. So thanks for your patience, bearing with us on that. We believe that these issues have all been resolved, and that should all be back to normal. Again, if you still having issues with Google Podcasts, just let us know. We'll try to keep an eye on that over the next few weeks. All right. Court, what else? What have you been up to this week?
Not a lot, to be honest, because, the dev episode did take up a lot of our times, and I don't want to I haven't put it in the script here, but a personal shout out to you two lads for all the work behind the scenes, just keeping everything in order. In terms of in-game, not a lot, just finishing up the usual end of season triumphs. Did do a Master NES challenge with Impetus here just before the weekend, and Guardian Games, and just getting ready for season 21. Impetus, what have you been doing?
Yes, I got carried through Master Nezrak's challenge, so I now have all the Master challenges for Root of Nightmares done. Still don't have the title because I have a few other easy ones to knock out, like a Void run and a All-Clan run, so maybe I'll get those done, maybe I won't. I don't really care too much about titles at this point, but it's nice to have some actual challenges done, especially since I did not do any of Master Kingsfall. So, and then of course, on top of that, I was lucky enough to get Akazia's Deception, which is the Ray Trace Rifle, unlocked for crafting, as well as Throne Cleaver for the Titans, unlocked for crafting, which took all season to do. So very happy with that. And the dev interview. I do just want to make it clear, we're not complaining that it's a pain at all to do any of these interviews, but there is a lot of setup that goes into them. And of course, because of this time around, we had access to an article that hadn't dropped, so that kind of put some timing pressure on things. We wanted to make sure that we got the episode out the day that the article itself came out, and so that took some extra coordinating on our end. But yes, it was a pleasure, of course, to host the Bungie devs, and shout out to the public relations team for being so flexible with us on such short notice. But we're ready for a break here, so we're getting ready, taking some time off to play the new season. But Saint, what have you been up to this last week?
Still been farming some Traxopus Scout Rifle rolls for Guardian Games a little bit. Did a Root of Nightmares run. I'm kind of interested in the Gutshot Straight Explosive Payload roll, which I feel like isn't something we talked about a ton when we first reviewed that weapon, but the way those perks kind of interact with each other, doing some funny damage stuff, which I'm not sure if that's intended, but I'm going to grab a roll to hang on to just in case that sticks around. Also, I have really not had good RNG with Root of Nightmares weapons dropping outside of like the guaranteed sources from the encounter, so still trying to wrap that up. I think I'm going to put Field Prep on my Tracer Rifle, ironically, which is something we talked about a few weeks ago. Impetus you'd recommended, and I've been thinking about it a long time, and I think that's where I'm actually going to land, because I was not interested initially in that, but just the amount of ammo that you can get with enhanced Field Prep is just kind of nuts. So I haven't been playing a ton of Destiny. I've been playing a lot of this game called Monster Sanctuary, which is actually like a few years old. But they put out a new update, and they're doing some marketing for that, and I caught wind of that, and I've really been enjoying that. It's kind of like a little, it's like got side scroller mechanics. It's very pixel arty. It's got kind of like 3v3 little like monster trainer battles, a lot of stuff like that. It's just a lot of fun. If you're looking for something fun to play, take a little break, which it's always good to do, at the end of every season, every now and then, play other games. Okay. It's okay. That's all right. You can do that, so really been enjoying that. I don't know. I think about halfway through, we'll see if I can beat it before the new season comes out here on Tuesday. Speaking of which, let's jump into the TWAB. Let's talk about the artifact. I'll just start off with column 1 here. This isn't anything super crazy, but basically it's our anti-champion set for the season. We've got anti-barrier auto, unstoppable hand cannon, overload scout, overload trace, and unstop glaive all in column 1. Interesting to see unstop glaive and like overload trace in column 1. I don't know if they've been there before. I feel like, usually those are like later columns, right? Yeah. So I mean, personally, the overload trace is like really jumping out to me here. How are you guys feeling about our upcoming set here? Any kind of weapons that you're anticipating kind of bubbling up into the meta that you're really excited to use with these mods?
So there was a little bit of confusion. Chris in our episode did say I don't think he explicitly said it, or maybe he did, because I haven't went back and listened to the show personally, but there was a mention of shotgun, a shotgun mod. Normally that's unstoppable, but that's been confirmed not to be the case. We're not getting that next season. So we're getting glaive again, because we had that this season with the overload overload sword mod. Interesting, actually, we haven't got any other further champion stuns in the rest of the columns. It's just those 5. Not that we need it. We have we do have the big kind of quality of life update that came with Lightfall, which you can stun champions through various means. But the one that I'm looking forward to is Trace Rifle. I think that's the most interesting one. Traces are kind of in a pretty good spot in the sandbox. We're getting a lot more options. A lot of the trace rifles have been getting a lot of updates recently as well. And I won't say anything here, but there's certainly been rumors of upcoming content which relates to trace rifles. But big bog standard ones. We've seen unstoppable hand cannon, and we've seen auto rifle as anti-barrier. That'll be a really good one to combo with Quicksilver. I used that quite a lot during I think it was season 18 or 19, the last time that was active. Quicksilver really shreds barriers, and it's a lot of fun.
Surely you meant to say sweet business, right, Court? I mean,
no.
Sweet business.
Because I am not a Titan.
Oh my. Can you believe this guy?
You could bring that in if you want, but Quicksilver is my kind of jam.
No, I got
No. I'll be too busy rocking my Cold Heart with Overload Trace Rifles. We've got a few other things coming up in these columns that might be Season of the Arc. So yeah, shall we jump into column 2 here?
Yeah.
This is our, I guess now is a kind of our column for discounted energy cost mods. So the Authorized Mods is what they're known as. We have Authorized Mods for Arc, Void, Strand, and Melee. Those will give you discounted energy costs on a host of mods related to those 3 elements, and then melee-related ones. You do also get Technicolor Siphon. That's a combo Siphon mod for Strand and Arc. Hence the emphasis on my trace rifle preference there. But yeah, it looks like Arc's coming back here. Very excited for that. Void still sticking around. I think that was a surprise for a few folks. Strand makes a lot of sense, of course. It's brand new. We want to keep playing Strand. We're also getting new aspects that they talk about in this TWAB, just a refresh next season. But yeah, Void's sticking around. No love for Stasis yet, but we've still got 2 more seasons after this one. But yeah, Arc, Void, Strand seems to be the big 3 that we're getting. So moving on to column 3, Saint, what do we have going on in there?
Ed, so this is, I think this is kind of leading into another champion one, which we'll really double down on later. But this is where things start to heat up. All right, we got improved Unraveling, increases the amount of damage dealt by unraveling a target. Deeper Origins greatly improves the benefits of Unsated Hunger, Nanotech Tracer Rockets, Harmonic Resonance, and Noble Deeds. Onto the Breach, defeating a Void debuff target creates a Void Breach while you're using a Void subclass. Electric Armor, stay amplified longer while your Arc subclass is equipped. And Thunderous Retort, gain bonus Arc super damage if cast while critically wounded or while amplified, lasts until the end of super activation. Man, Thunderous Retort,
it's back.
It's back. Thunder Crash, is always good. Curious is always, is always dealing out the damage. But what if we could do more? What if we could crank that up a little bit more? And Thunderous Retort is here to make sure that happens. Also, Court, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe Unraveling Rounds is a barrier counter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I definitely feel like anti-barrier auto is fine. Don't get me wrong, War Rig, Sweet Business is going to be a blast, right? But I feel like Unraveling for barrier is going to be a very strong counter this season, just like we saw with Volatile Flow, right? In season 20 is definitely something I see coming here.
And the reason why I've mentioned Quicksilver is because it's intrinsically strand once you get the catalyst upgraded, obviously. But so Unraveling Rounds is one of the counters for Banner Champions, and it's got its own kind of little. It's not really a mini game, but its own kind of intrinsic effects that kind of proc, and it's like these little kind of nanites. Think of Outbreak Perfecti's nanites. It's these little kind of green, kind of unraveling, kind of a poison effect, if you want to call it that. So improved unraveling. I'm assuming will also apply to Unraveling Rounds. A very good combo. Quicksilver plus that. You mentioned there about Thunderous Retort for Thunder Crash. I think it will be the same for Gathering Storm, where you'll only get that benefit on the actual impact of the staff. So you won't get the continued damage you get with Gathering Storm. So yeah, it's nice to see that back. Onto the Breach, with this still being kind of a little bit of a mild Void season. I am looking forward to pairing that with my Void classes. Very easy to Void debuff. Of course, Void Breaches do synergize with your builds. There's a couple of fragments that you can use to get Devourer. Void Breaches, when you pick them up, also give you that 12.5% class ability. So yeah, we're at column 3 and there's some juicers. You got any highlights here, Impetus?
Onto the Breach is the one that's kind of sticking out. I just haven't played with Void Breaches a whole lot as a Void Warlock, but I always run Echo of Undermining, which gives my grenades the weaken conditions. So I'll now have an artifact mod that will really let me play around with Void Breaches without having to make any changes to the loadout that I do use. So that'll be nice to actually get to experience those. I'm trying to think.
Doesn't Childe of the Old Gods, what does that do to? Does that weaken, or what does that do to things that it attaches
it weakens,
to? It weakens, yeah.
Problem is, I'm definitely not going to run Childe now that the grenade focused aspect is getting an extra fragment slot.
Oh yeah,
that's the problem.
That's true.
That was always my biggest problem. Is like I get enhanced grenades and then I get access to Devour. And then there's also Childe of the Old Gods, which does have 2 fragment slots. But now that all of our Warlock aspects will have 2 fragment slots, I'm definitely probably not going to touch it for PvE. Right? I've definitely used it in PvP, but yeah. So rip to the Childe. I'll still be cursing you out in comp and trials and wherever else I see you, Iron Banner. But I do want to try out Thunderous Retort on some of our roaming supers, just to see how that is, because it does stipulate that this lasts until the end of the super activation, which matters a whole lot more for your roaming supers. So I definitely do want to try Fist of Havoc next season. That's kind of on my things to do list, and then also to see. Maybe not Arc Staff. Gathering Storm's just a little too hot for me to maybe commit to that, but I'll try Fist of Havoc. That's I'll branch out in that.
Yeah, it's getting big buffs.
Area.
We got a lot of buffs and Thunderous Retort. So they really want to make Emperor Palpatine and Striker Titan happen, right? It's really getting pushed.
But also, roaming supers are where you're critically wounded the most, right? Like it's pretty easy to stay critically wounded when you're running around getting close to tough enemies. So I could see a pairing there. If it's worth the matter, we'll find out in a few weeks. But
if only there was a mod in here that would help me keep my arc grenades up so I could get amplified more. I don't.
Were you going to say something, Court?
I was going to say, because Thunder's Retort doesn't work with the second half of Gathering Storm, I'm thinking of pairing this with Art Staff and Raid and Flux. Now, you know, we talked about our kind of thoughts and vibes a few episodes ago with the approach to roaming supers, and I still have a particular problem when it comes to Art Staff and how I kind of have to use Raid and Flux for it to work. To give me really good damage and uptime. But Thunder's Retort, I think, was 25% the last time it was back. It was 25 or 30% damage increase. So pair that with the Arc Staff damage increase it's getting. Raid and Flux is like 63%, if I remember correctly, and it slows down your super drain, which is equally as important as damage. So it may be up there in the sort of super damage DPS. But yeah, I am looking forward to it.
Column 4?
Yeah, column 4, some very interesting ones here. We've got Strand Soldier. Your Strand weapons gain unraveling rounds whenever you gain Woven Mail while your Strand subclass is equipped. Overcharge Armory, weapons with unsated hunger, nanotech, tracer rockets, harmonic resonance, noble deed traits are always overcharged for you when that modifier is active. So it's the same as Origin Hones that we have in Season 20. We've got Protective Breach. Picking up a Void Breach gives you an Overshield or refreshes your existing Overshield. Hint, hint, use with Unto the Breach. Counter Charge, gain a stack of armor charge when you stun a champion, and Amped Up, gain damage resistance well amplified. Whew, all right, some more juicers here. Impetus, what are you thinking?
Can you only pick like 3 from this column? I'm trying to remember like how many I have. Is that the limit, or can you go up to 4? Because I so 4.
Although, in saying that, you could theoretically pick all 5 if you don't pick column 4.
But none in
column
the
5.
last column, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Wow. This is going to be brutal. This is a great column 4. Rip to Overcharge Armory. Everything else is amazing. Yeah. So Countercharge obviously going to be extremely helpful for GM and Master Raids, Master Dungeons, which of course we will have a new Master Dungeon coming out next season. The Wombo combo of Unto the Breach and Protective Breach. I mean, again, as a Void Warlock, I don't get a lot of access to Overshields, so this will be quite nice for me to really play around with that. Having I guess it'll depend on whether or not Unto the Breach has a timer, a cooldown timer, because I can kill a lot of stuff with my Void Grenades. So if there's no timer, I think the Void Overshield plus Devour is going to be excellent for solo runs. For those of you that maybe want to give that a shot for the upcoming dungeon or any existing dungeons, you are going to be exceptionally tanky. That'll be really strong to try out. Strand Soldier, I mean, goodness sakes, now I can see why we only have one anti-barrier artifact mod for the weapons, because this is going to be so easy to generate for Strand weapons, and we've got some pretty juicy Strand options already. Very excited. I'll definitely be picking that one up. Amped Up, have we had Amped Up before? Is that new? I can't remember if we had something similar.
I don't think so.
It sounds familiar.
I'd have to go back and look at like season, whatever, 17 or 18. Now,
When a Strand Titan shoots a Tangle, does that apply Woven Mail to everybody regardless of your subclass?
Yeah.
Or do you okay, so you don't have to be on Strand to take advantage of that.
But it says gain unraveling rounds when you gain Woven Mail while using Strand.
Oh, I'm just thinking of having Woven Mail on top of Amped Up procced if I'm on an Arc subclass and my Strand Titan friend shoots a Tangle.
Oh. Imagine taking damage. Am I right? You know?
And then I also have a repulsor brace weapon, so I get a Void Overshield, you know.
And while you have Speed Booster active, you get 15% damage resistance as well. So you have to be running around.
I might just solo master Nezrak next
We
time.
zooming, dude.
I mean, how?
We zooming.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be moving at the speed of light and just won't be taking any damage. Lot of fun stuff to play around with. What are you guys looking at?
Yeah, I think Unto the Breach and Protective Breach. You guys know I'm a big Void hunter. It's Echo of Starvation, what gives you Devour as one of the fragments. So pair that with Protective Breach, which then gives me an Overshield. I can drop one of the fragments, which gives me an Overshield as well. Let's see. It's Cessation, I think it was. No, sorry.
Starvation? Breaches for Devour?
Vigilance. Vigilance is where you kill while you've got while you're at critical health, you'll get a Void Overshield. So I can take that off and just instead use Protective Breach. It's going to be insane, the amount of Void Breaches that are going to be on the playing field. Yeah. These are all juicers. And yeah, to your point earlier about could I theoretically have, maybe not overcharge armory, but 4 of them, then 1 column from column 5. Oh boy.
Why do you say that, Court? What's in column 5?
Oh, okay. Well,
I'll pass over to Saint. He can talk about it.
Well, first of all, I want to say, like, when I'm reading Unto the Breach and Protective Breach, it's like somebody knows that I'm addicted to offensive bulwark and they just want to feed me, okay? Because that's all that I'm seeing right now is just offensive bulwark is eating good, okay? I have an easier time than ever. I don't even need to be using a repulsor brace weapon to be capitalizing on offensive bulwark with a really high uptime, which is wild. The amount of uptime you can have with some grenade kickstart mods, Heart of Most Light plus offensive bulwark. It's really, I'm seeing a super strong synergy there. And yeah, I'm looking at Strand's Strongest Soldier, like, praise the Traveler that I crafted a Rufus's Fury, because I feel like that's going to be popping off too. Court, I guess back to your original point there that, like, we've got Quicksilver. But even when we don't have Quicksilver, you've got a legendary option that's like almost, it's like the legendary equivalent, right? With excellent trait combos that I'm really having a tough time deciding where I'm going to land for crafting. But yeah, all right. Anyways, moving on to column 5. Conductive Cosmic Needle. Targets affected by strand debuffs take increased damage from arc and void abilities. Okay. Shock and awe. Arc Funnel blows while you're amplified summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. Supernova. Picking up a Void Breach causes your next source of void damage to create a large weakening pulse. Squad Goals. Performing a finisher while you're amplified grants amplified to nearby allies when your arc subclass is equipped. Woven Mail to nearby allies when your strand subclass is equipped. And then same thing for Devour. Performing a finisher while you have Devour grants Devour to nearby allies when you have a Void subclass equipped. Incredible support trait there, especially for like an Aeon's focus build. And then finally, to wrap it out, Lightning Strikes Twice. After throwing an Arc Grenade, gain increased Arc Grenade recharge for a short time. Arc Funnel Blows extend the duration of this benefit. We were talking about taking all of column 4, but I'm having a real hard time not taking at least 2 of these things in column 5. Court, what are your first 2 picks going to be?
Well, of course, it's Supernova.
Yeah.
I feel like obviously this is going to be the focus of the season for Arc, but you're going to find me lost in Void for most of the season. I feel like I'm going to be spawning lots of Void Breaches and causing Weaken, getting myself an Overshield, Devour, and just looping back on itself with Unto the Breach, where Void debuffs create more Void Breaches. So it's going to be absolutely crazy. I will say Conductive Cosmic Needle is the next one that kind of strikes me as very interesting, because a lot of the community don't really utilize other kind of strand debuffs outside of Suspend. Unravel's maybe the second best or the second option that folks use a lot, but we have one of the, or we've got a few perks in here that kind of benefit off of Unravel, which is a strand debuff. So if you're pairing that with your fire team, they're using Arc and Void abilities. A lot of debuffs, a lot of weakens. Lightning strikes twice. It's always a welcome addition to the artifact. But squad goals having the sort of, while you're on X thing, your nearby allies grant X thing to nearby allies when you're on X class. And that's very interesting one. Very, very interesting. Performing a finisher while you have Devour grants Devour to nearby allies when your Void subclass is equipped. So I'm reading that as, if I'm on Void, but you guys are on Arc and Strand, you'll also get Devour. Oh boy.
Good old Arc Titan Devour, huh?
Oh no.
Void Warlock's about to become the support class for the first time ever, dude. Pop on Aeons on my Void Walker build. Throw a Devour around to everybody. Give them heavy ammo too. Yeah. Thank goodness we're getting this change next season where I can pick an individual mod to refund and then reselect on the artifact, because I'm probably going to hit at least 4. I might even hit all 5 of Column 5 since I only have one spot open at a time. I'll just be ping-ponging between all 5 of these throughout the course of the season, depending on the activity. So, yeah.
Impetus will have no Column 1 perks active.
Yeah, that's right. I don't need Unstop Glaive. I already had it last season. It'll just be Overload Trace Rifle because I'll have Cold Hard on, and then that'll be it. Yeah, this is a really, really solid artifact. So, yeah, what are we looking forward to? A lot of different mods. That's what we're looking forward to next season. It's going to be very, very fun.
I really like the idea that running, Conductive Cosmic Needle, it really feeds into this idea of a really, synergized fire team. You've got an Arc Hunter, a Void Warlock, and a Strand Titan, or whatever combination of the 3 that it may be, and the fact that you guys can play into each other's abilities so much while all still having your own unique builds, and that they will they put this one in there, I feel very strategically, to make it kind of synergizing between your 3 different artifact builds of the season, which I'm super interested in. And I always like those RPG aspects of the game, and I think this is a subtle mod, but it's one that builds into the idea of, hey, man, if you have somebody that is in here, they're running the Cosmic Needle, they're running Strand Soldier, they're running the Unraveling buff, and then you have, your just debuff Void Grenades, your Arc Titan coming in dealing chunk damage, Nova Bombs coming in. I'm seeing some real nice team synergy, and I'm liking it. In Lightning Strikes Twice, I don't know what else to say other than Pulse Grenades are still really good. Storm Grenades may be gone, but Pulse Grenades were right there waiting to take their spot, and you're getting multiple arc traces from them. You're staying amplified for longer. The build is building itself here out of the artifact.
So squad goals kind of reminds me of the Aeon Gauntlets. So to your point there of you're kind of synergizing with your fire team. Let's say I'm the Arc Hunter, Impetus is the Void Warlock, and Saint's the Strand Titan. And if we've all got that on, I'm granting Amplified to my Strand and Void friends. I've just got this vision of an amplified Strand Titan running around with a woven mail shield. And then, you giving a Saint giving off us woven mail, and then Impetus giving us Devour, and it's just going to be unstoppable. We're all speeding around. We've all got DR, large DR in PvE, and we've all got Devour. Nothing can kill us.
Awesome. So cool. All right, speaking of things that are so cool, let's touch on some individual highlights from our developer episode. We're not going to do a big recap, of course. That's what the episode itself is for there, but we do want to touch on what were our personal highlights for the three of us. So, Court, do you want to start things off with what you really enjoyed, what you really took away from last week?
So the biggest thing, and it's one of the bigger kind of feedback points that I've seen while I've been kind of looking on social media and Reddit and our Discord server. But for me personally, I really loved and really super appreciated hearing more insight and the armor team's philosophy when it comes to exotic armor. So Rodney did go into a little bit more kind of discussion of, it takes between 6 to 9 months at any given time, and there's a lot of overlap between each exotic from conception to release, and that did kind of tempered my expectations when it does come to exotic armor. Yeah, 6 to 9 months is a long time. Put that in perspective. 9 months from now is like basically final shape. So, like, if there's anything that they're starting to work on now, you'll probably see in final shape, and that's still far off. But it was still nice to get that philosophy and just hearing that. I think that just hearing the team's point of view and their perspective when it comes to creating exotic armor has it hasn't solved, it hasn't fixed the general sentiment from the community when it comes to exotic armor, because it's still one of the lesser pillars compared to the ability sandbox and the weapon sandbox. But now that we see there is some movement towards exotic armor actually getting some improvements, it's definitely worthwhile to hear from Rodney and the team when it comes to exotic armor. The second thing was sword reworks. I've always been a fan of the swords. Exotic swords and legendary swords are really great to play around with, but they've been pretty, behind when it comes to damage. There's you could maybe count on one hand the places where you could do swords. I'm thinking Golrun in Duality Dungeon, or the first boss in the Prophecy Dungeon. But elsewhere, it's, swords could be a little bit fun if you've got maybe Chain Reaction, or if you've got like Incandescent. But beyond that, it's not something you'd want to bring in. I think Grade Launchers are seeing a little bit more usage compared to swords. But yeah, that's sometime in the future. Looking forward to that. And the big one, especially for me, the buff and debuff guy, the UI is getting a revamp. It's been confirmed. It's getting some sort of rework in the future, and I can't wait for it. Seeing when we saw Chris talk about the sort of their offsetting a lot of the buffs and the debuffs that you get with the reticles, and that's coming in season 21. Well, that's not going to disappear from the buff and debuff UI. They are going to get sort of deprioritized. So that's a nice foundation level of, oh yes, I can finally see if I have some stupid debuff that's going to kill me. Or how many armor charges do I have? I don't know, because I've got some cooldown from Echo of Harvest that's blocking that. So I cannot wait for this change. This has been a long time coming to see a debuff and buff UI rework. But yeah, loved the interview, loved hearing all the perspective, and when it comes to these type of episodes, I do get that vibe of I'm sat around the campfire and I'm just fascinated with the discussion, with the perspectives from the team. Impetus, what was your kind of big highlight here?
Yeah, for me the big standout was an explanation and answer to the damage stacking philosophy from mostly from Rodney, but also a little bit of input from Chris. Just how they approach that, what are the kind of pillars of that philosophy, that was extremely informative for me. Some of those I think, we'd already guessed out, but again, just having that confirmation of, this is what we prioritize when it comes to damage stacking. These are the ways in which we interact with that. This is how we want players to interact with that, I think was definitely put a little bit of perspective that was much needed for me, at least when it comes to build crafting. So that was very, very informative to hear about and nice to know going forward when we get new armor that provides new exotic armor, that kind of brings its own stacking philosophy, the way that Eternal Warrior and Paths of the Burning Steppe do. So that was kind of the big thing that I really enjoyed. I've got a few other ones that Saint also put, so I'll let him talk about those that were also highlights for me. So I'll pass it off to you now.
I'll just start off with saying that Rodney mentioned that the combat mod rework started in summer 2021. We're coming up on 2 years ago, that there was 3-4 different stages of design, redesign before something really stuck and started to take hold. It just shows how much time went into that, how much thought went into that, and how many iterations went into that. They're trying to take something that was developed over, literally years and years, and consolidate it and smooth it out and then make it sustainable, right? Which is a huge undertaking. And it's honestly not crazy to think that it took 1.5 years, almost 2 years before that became to its full fruition of what its original idea was. And then at the very end of the episode, Chris mentioned being able to enhance perks on any weapon that can't be crafted. That really piqued my interest because I like, I like crafted weapons, and that's great, and I like the ability to invest in my weapon that I've crafted, enhance the ones that I really like, put an ornament on the one that I really like. Would love to see even more ornaments we've talked about in the past and stuff like that. Is great as a way to kind of uniquely set that weapon apart in your collection. But now I can do that for any weapon that I really like, or in this case, I'd be able to take even my favorite, world drop weapon, my Vanguard playlist weapon of the season that dropped that I just absolutely love, and I can enhance the traits on it. I don't have to get 5 red borders for it. I get my 2 main perks that I like and a pretty good barrel and mag. I can invest some materials in it. Now I've got enhanced traits on it, and I can make my favorite weapon, no matter its source, stand apart. And that is something that I'm super interested in. I don't know. Hey, you guys have any other thoughts on the kind of the weapon crafting and weapon enhancing traits there before we move on?
Chris also said that this will also apply to weapons that have multiple traits. So theoretically, we've got 3 perks in columns 3 and 4. We'll be able to enhance all 6 of those perks. Is my understanding anyway.
I didn't even think about that.
That's what I took away from that, and I'm also equally excited. That was kind of a so when we were doing the episode, we were kind of live editing our script that we use. So this was the final question, and it was one that I was it was you could see the little angel kind of beams coming from it. I was like, okay, we need to ask this and just see and to hear their general feedback that they've received from the communities. Okay, how has this been going? And to hear Chris just blatantly go, we'll be expanding this to everything else. I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm glad I picked this question.
Yeah. Oh man. All of our faces, because we all had our cameras on, the eyebrows just immediately shooting up as we're all silently looking at each other.
So very interesting. I think we've talked a lot the last couple of kind of months over the last year, kind of weapon crafting and adept weapons and how they kind of position themselves with each other. This is very interesting to see not only adept weapons, but just standard, core weapons, playlist weapons getting this treatment. So very interested to see this. I really hope they continue doing adept weapon sort of enhancing perks, because I personally think it is a fine system. I know we've got that a little bit later on in our kind of seasonal review, but just to sort of highlight here is I do want them to keep building on that, because I still think adept weapons just have that slight kind of, they need just a little bit of a plus, which I think we're getting there with these kind of with these type of changes. But World Drop's getting this treatment as well. It's just like, wow, wasn't expecting that, but thank you. Yeah.
All right. I think you guys ready to jump into our last chunk here?
Yes, the big review.
Yeah,
season 19. A little bit of Lightfall. I mean, obviously, we're still in the midst of kind of the expansion part of it, so I think we'll probably save a few thoughts. Of course, Strand is still work in progress. We got most of it though, but yeah, well, let's dive into season 19 story narrative arc. How are we feeling about this season's story?
Dude, Crow can't catch a break, man. I mean, that's just he's dude. He may be beefy, but that's about all he's got going for him, and it's just sad, honestly. At this point, you feel bad for the guy. I mean, that's my general takeaway. R.I.P. Amanda Holiday. I don't know. That one felt kind of weird. Felt kind of sudden. People always compare her to a Guardian, which I think is something I heard. I think that was like Mile Inner Life that was talking about that recently, about how people are like, "Oh, you're not a Guardian already," and I don't know if that's like foreshadowing or if that's just like was supposed to be hinting at the fact that she's going to die or that she's going to be a Guardian. I don't know which one, but yeah, honestly the biggest thing for me was seeing Aramis have like the moral conflict of like, oh man, I've effed up. Like I've really picked the wrong side here, and it's really costing me, and things are going like absolutely horribly, right? And my people are being like turned into scorn and used against me, and it's like just wearing on me, I don't know.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
Amanda's dead. Okay. Rip.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a whole lot of bonding time with her. Yeah. I guess we'll just have to go to Master Rahul for my Amazon Prime drops now. But okay. Less of a walk.
You got this. You got my exotic ship, Rahul.
Sorry to any Amanda fans out there. Really didn't mean it to come off that harsh. But
this was the seasonal version of the Lightfall campaign with Rohan dying. It's just like,
okay.
Yikes. I'm sorry for your loss. I ain't reading all that kind of vibe. But to be honest, I did enjoy the little cutscene. The actual kind of the narrative beat of Amanda and seeing that cutscene, the sort of the art style that they've been utilizing for a lot of these kind of cutscenes. I love seeing those during the seasons. But yeah, Amanda dying was just like, okay.
Dude, also, why were they keeping human prisoners? What happened? We never got to that. What's going on there, man?
Because they're evil, Saint. They're bad guys, and they do bad things.
I can't deny that.
Don't know. We're swimming next season, so that's kind of that problem's past. We've got other stuff to do.
Summer
Guardian games came around.
Stop. Dude. It was nice. It was nice to hear from Devram. I'm glad that he finally got out of the church to actually talk and stuff. So that was nice. I would love to hear a little bit more from some other people that haven't gotten to talk recently. But shout out to Devram for chatting it up with Mithrax. That was a fun dynamic, and got to, I guess, hear from Asher Mir in some way, right? The exotic mission in some way. He's chilling. We found the lake finally. That's cool.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about. We just jump into Avalon real quick, kind of as an exotic mission, right? I mean, I don't know if I would rank this. I would probably put this as maybe my like second or third exotic mission, probably number 3 of all time. I don't know. Yeah, how about you guys? I was big on this. I don't know.
So the actual kind of play space and the story, the sort of narrative beat, yeah, I would agree with you. But their kind of weird, strange difficulty spike here was something that put me off. Like, I enjoyed the actual content, and I enjoyed, we talk about ad density, and we talk about the amount of enemies that you go up against and bosses, but because Avalon had this very strange kind of Neomuna style, you could never be above their light level, so you're always going to be doing less damage, just bullet sponge, and that's what put me off playing Division all those years ago, and that's what made me stay with Destiny, because we have become very powerful in some areas of the game, but here was just that place where it's like, oh, I'm getting Division vibes, where a lot of these enemies are bullet sponges, and it's not very interesting. But yeah, no, I really like the actual, like, I want to hear more from Ashmere. I think he's a very fascinating character, and maybe we'll get back to Io in the future. But yeah, the actual difficulty spike was what kind of brought my kind of tearing for this. I think I would have enjoyed this a lot more if it wasn't as just people having to cheese with Wish Ender through one of the radial area waterfalls or water upward falls. That's where it's like, okay, this isn't really working out, this difficulty spike. Impetus, you got any thoughts here? I feel like you're going to echo the same comments that I just made.
Yeah, Avalon's going to be really low on my list for the bullet sponge part. Yeah. But from a narrative point of view, I think this actually ranks right up there with, oh goodness, and I'm already going to forget it. What's the Callous one that we got back in Season of the Chosen?
Presage,
thank you. One of the things that I loved about Presage was we were getting some lore on a topic that we did not know a whole bunch about at the time, which was the Voice in the Darkness, Callus's interactions. And this time around with Avalon, we're getting Asher Mir's information through Mithrax regarding the Vex, which is still a huge question mark. And I think a lot of people are starting to wonder if that's going to be something that we explore maybe after the final shape, right? But there's still so much about the Vex that we just don't understand. And so getting to go through this space, unlock the secrets, and learn what Asher Mir has been learning about the Vex and how he's been adapting to being in the Vex network, that was really that was the highlight for me. I mean, I really love those when the exotic missions kind of let us take a peek behind the curtain at a topic that we just don't know a whole lot about. So really, really love that part of Avalon. But spending half the mission dealing with Brachion, even though it was a really cool idea of having it be split across 3 floors, it just took a long time. And it's never fun when you get into a fire team and it takes even longer, because that makes it really hard if you have somebody who wants to get into doing exotic missions to say, in the case of Avalon, you're probably best off just going in completely blind, because it's going to get a lot harder if I show up and if somebody else shows up to join us. But yeah, I think overall it's probably still middle of the rankings for me for exotic missions overall. But again, still a lot of fun to play through. Getting all the catalysts for Vex Caliber, which seems like it's going to be a really fun weapon to play around with. I mean, they've all typically been really fun weapons to play around with so far, the weapons that drop from these missions. But yeah, getting the catalysts, having to do 3 separate Legend runs definitely took it out of me. I never want to do Legend Avalon ever again. Oh, it's exhausting.
Yeah, I hear you on the sponginess. I've done one run recently, and it's not quite as bad, right? And that was a big detractor. But yeah, the space of it and the lore and the weapon itself all really just spoke to me, which is I think I rank it so highly. I would still definitely put 0 Hour as my number 1 exotic mission. I just really loved everything from the puzzles to the actual mission itself, the weapon, the catalyst puzzles, like all of it just really hit home for me. Yeah, I don't know. Impetus Court, real quick before we move on, number 1 exotic mission.
Oh boy. It'll Presage, because I've done that one probably the most, but Whisper would be an easy number 2. That play space is just unbeatable, man. Yeah. Holy cow.
For me, it's Whisper. It's the first one. Maybe because it was just such a surprise to see it. There's this unknown taken entity that appeared on IO. But with how that just rolled out, and it was just it felt like that classic Destiny 1. If you go backwards on a strike, you'll get a completely different strike. So that's that sort of vibe, and just those type of secrets which we haven't really had. Presage was maybe the last one we've had, but we kind of knew that was coming up anyway, because that's when they were still doing these like seasonal roadmaps. We knew, oh, it just had Presage and the ship, but we didn't get any context behind that. But Whisper for me, number one.
All right. Well, also I'll say, if you've been around Destiny for a long time, I don't think it's crazy to say that Whisper mission was the turning point for D2. And then that kind of momentum was kept going into Forsaken, so I also think very fondly of that time. But that's a big meta-narrative conversation for another day about a 7-year-long game or whatever we're playing now.
When did the Whisper mission come out again?
Warmind.
Right, okay. Yeah. I thought that. I was thinking it was like a little bit into Forsaken, or it was during Warmind. But yeah, Warmind was the season where a lot of folks came back. But yeah, anyway, we don't want to get into that particular rabbit hole. But the rabbit hole we do want to get into, seasonal activities. We've got gameplay loops here. So we did get more Battlegrounds. I know the general sentiment with the community is that they're getting a little bit sick and tired of these
stop.
kind of... we did get new GMs. So Mars Battleground from the previous season. That was one of the GMs, one of my highlights for GM, and also Hypernet Current. And we also got revamp strikes. We had Arms Dealer and Lake of Shadows. I will kick us off. I really like these revamp strikes. I think Arms Dealer's my preferred one out of the two. Nobody likes escorting a massive relic, which kind of eats up the time, but I still like Lake of Shadows. I do enjoy both of these, and I am glad that they did spend some time revamping these. Should we get more of these traditional strikes? Yeah, I think we should get more, and I think we are. They kind of last season 19 heading in, they did say, look, we're reducing the priority for the Nessus strikes, which kind of was like, yeah, we're in the middle of revamping these for a future season. So I don't want like an overabundance of Battlegrounds, because I do enjoy those type of contents, the amount of ads and enemies that we do go up against, but I don't want them to get too heavy-handed with these. I think it's nice having a variety of traditional strikes and Battlegrounds themselves. What are you lads thinking?
Go for it, Saint.
Yeah, Hypernet Current, very cool. Like all the interesting enemies, interactions, Sparrow sections, all interesting. Mars Battleground, boss room is really tough, and it can be really punishing with the boss himself. And I don't like the idea that like hiding in a pillar is like the most effective strategy. But I will say that other than that, I actually am pretty fond of that mission, and I like about the first, 70% of it, 80% of it. Just wish there was a little bit of a better way to navigate the boss room than just hide. Arms Dealer, very cool. Lake of Shadows, yeah, man, like if I wanted to play Overwatch 2, I'd play Overwatch 2, and I don't want to play Overwatch 2. But like,
Saint, they don't have PvE, buddy. What do you mean?
Yeah. I was going to make that comment, then I'd stop because it's so mean.
That's so... Okay, 15-second side rail. Man, that's so sad. That is genuinely sad to see, because like, that there's a lot of people that worked forever on that, and it's just like never going to see the light of day, and you just absolutely hate to see it. But yeah, I guess come play Lake of Shadows revamp if you're missing that. I do like actually fighting the boss in Lake of Shadows, though. That part is cool. I like actually having to fight the boss instead of just like killing him in 5 seconds. That is a good rework. The actual like Battleground seasonal loop are fine. They're a little long at some points. Battlegrounds, I feel like, have just become so well known for their enemy density, and that's very good. And I like the way you can kind of test a build in like a -5, -10 light situation, and get a good feel for it. That part is really good. They can drag on though a little bit, especially after you've been grinding them all season. They can feel a little bit long, but overall it's fine seasonal loop. I didn't mind it at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys on all those points. I was interested to see how Battleground would play out in a GM setting, since those are all about like infinite ad waves within a given time as you're trying to progress some objective. Ghost is trying to open a door, which is the case for Mars Battleground. The boss room also has infinitely spawning ads. I was worried about it. It is, I mean, in the boss room in particular, it's definitely probably one of the more challenging things, especially once we get to that halfway point, and then the Arc Knights keep spawning in over and over and over until you complete the GM. That is challenging. Definitely, yeah. I think, I don't know. I would really hope that we don't get more than one Battleground GM in a season. Like if they want to bring back more Battlegrounds as night falls, I don't. Yeah, they're rough. I think I just prefer kind of the classic strike of we take a journey from point A to point B. We might stop for like 5 minutes in one given room, and then we're kind of quickly off to the next part. I do kind of prefer that just for the change of scenery, but that is just not how Battlegrounds work. You're very much in one spot for a long period of time, and then you move on to the next spot, and you're there for the rest because that's when the boss shows up. So, again, different strokes for different folks. I like the revamped strikes, but at this point, I really want better loot. If the strikes are going to increase in difficulty, which I do think a lot of them need to be touched up, I want actual weapons from the Nightfall playlist that match that increase in difficulty, because that will lose me if the loot stays at the level that it's been with. I mean, where do I start? Comedian level, mid-bender level. That's not going to cut it for me. I need something a little bit closer to Hothead, a little bit closer to Palindrome. I'm not saying, obviously those were defining weapons for a very long time. I'm not asking that we go beyond those levels, but I'd like to at least get back to that point with at least one weapon per season. That's just very, very much a must-have for people that want to go chase in-game content, because right now the loot situation is not doing it for me, and if they're going to keep getting more and more difficult I don't know. I don't need to guild Conqueror. I've done it plenty of times by now. I know where I stand as a Nightfall player, but if the loot's not it, I don't need to go into a GM necessarily. That's kind of the point where I'm at. So I hope we get to see some spicy stuff. I hope that our upcoming loot does take a turn, because right now it's just not hitting for me, and I don't like running the GMs over and over just for the content itself. I'm very much do it once and kind of be done with it if the loot isn't there. So we'll see, but yeah, it was very, very fun to play through this stuff one time and then kind of put it behind me.
Well, speaking of loot, we've got a section here for legendary weapons. I'll also incorporate the perks and origin traits here. So we've got Seasons of Defiance weapons. We'd get a new heavy waveframe archetype from the new Neomuna weapons, Root of Nightmare weapons, and world drops, and sort of miscellaneous. A lot of kind of older weapons got kind of a feel forged kind of origin trait attached to it. Speaking of, we've got field tested, which is that particular origin trait. Nanotech tracer rockets for the Neomuna weapons, noble deeds for the Defiance, and harmonic resonance for Root of Nightmares. Some new perks as well: destabilizing rounds, envious assassin, hatchling, keep away, valiant charge, and paracausal affinity. So I'll start us off, just kind of our vibes. I think the seasonal weapons were, some good ones. I am enjoying a lot with using Royal Executioner. Regnant has actually been pretty interesting, because it is the only one currently that has explosive light that you can actually craft. You get 7 instead of 6 stacks of explosive light stacks. Neomuna weapons, some are craftable, some aren't. It's kind of a weird subset that you can craft some of them, but not a few others. They've been okay. I think some okay choices there. I have actually been using Hypertrochoid quite a lot, and it is a lot of fun, with it being the heavy waveframe. But I think for me, in terms of weapons, it's definitely Root of Nightmares. Now, they don't look all that great artistically, But I think, Rufus Fury has to be like the standout when it comes to Root of Nightmare's weapons. I have been using a fair bit of the Trace Rifle. I've been enjoying using that. Impetus mentioned this a few episodes ago, where it's like you don't want to put incandescent on that because Prometheus Lens is doing that anyway. So I am going to kind of rejig around with some of the sort of perk rolls that goes on that. I've got 2 adept versions. I can't remember the actual perk rolls on them. Caraxis with the very unique chain reaction hatchling roll that looks a lot of fun. Kind of in lower end content, you're not going to get a lot of hatchling spawns in GMs, but definitely the Root of Nightmare's weapons have been the big highlights. Saint, what's your big highlight weapons?
Yeah, I would say harsh language, it's got to be like the world drop highlight. Yeah. I got a golden tricorn roll on that thing that I have really been enjoying.
All right, you don't need to rub it in.
Yeah, I know. I know that has been particularly hard to come by this season, the world drop weapons, and that is kind of annoying. That is a lucky one. I think Iterative Loop is probably my favorite Neomuna weapon. That thing is just a lot of fun. I mean, it's hard to not enjoy a rapid fire fusion with Volt Shot and like Convulsive Reloader, right? It's just great. And then, Conditional Finality is like maybe one of the better raid exotics they've ever made. It's like hard to not just absolutely love that thing. I do also enjoy, my legendary Quicksilver, like we talked about, the Fury, the Squid Glock, aka Michael's Reverence, and I've been using the Dejection as well, the Trace Rifle, a good amount towards the end of the season here, even though there's not a lot of solar stuff going on right now. I like Keep Away a lot in the Crucible. Honestly, Hatchling is like one of the traits it just like sounds really good to me, but I just have not actually enjoyed very much when I'm using it on my Strand weapons. I find that there is like usually other traits that I want to use. Paracausal Affinity, I really do enjoy using, like especially with Rufus, where it benefits me to use Strand a lot. I don't know, pretty good season of weapons. I was actually just running some story missions with Moon the other day, and I got a Dimensional Hypotrochoid with One for All, Stats for All, because I got the patterns on it. I never crafted it, and I've actually been enjoying that just the past I don't know, week or so, but haven't spent a ton of time, even though it is a very interesting new weapon type. Overall, I would say really, really solid set of weapons. With some highlights, kind of some standouts in each piece of our set from the season here. It was just any favorites.
Pretty much anything that can roll hatchling. That's kind of been the standout for me. Warlocks, we got really lucky in that our first Strand weapon perk relates directly to the thing that we excel at, and there have been a lot of excellent options this season to really take advantage of Threadlings. I know some people are kind of on the fence about its viability in the endgame. I have not had any struggle using Threadlings and GMs. I ran the Mars Battleground with that. It was quite helpful for keeping enemies off of my back as I was running away from the boss in the boss room, especially the Thrall in particular. But yeah, I mean, stuff like the Immortal SMG with Threadling, Rufus, of course, with, it's Hatchling, but Threadlings are what they generate. Taraxpus, I've got a 4th times Hatchling, and then Caraxis Chain Reaction Hatchling has been a ton of fun, and then the Machine Gun Circular Logic with Feeding Frenzy Hatchling that you can get from Terminal Overload. That's really been kind of the defining weapon perk that's really made an imprint on me. I've really enjoyed looking for those weapons that get it, and then thinking, okay, do I need this weapon with Hatchling? Yes, no. All right, let's chase it down. Let's find out how good it is on this. But yeah, that's definitely stood out to me. I do kind of wish that they had gone with a different weapon perk for all 3 subclasses, strand subclasses to really take advantage of. I think something with Unravel or Sever as an initial first perk would have probably made a little bit more sense to kind of get people into those debuffs that strand does have that are excellent debuffs, but I think Suspend kind of just crowds them out for right now. Let's see, Destabilizing Grounds. Again, if I got some weapons to drop with that, I probably would play around with it a little bit more. Valiant Charge. I'll be honest, I don't get the point of this perk. I really don't. I've seen some people talk about it. I know some speedrunners have been trying to use it for stuff, but I am not a speedrunner. I'm quite happy with my Eager Edge swords. So yeah, I guess maybe if we get an Eager Edge Valiant Charge sword at some point, maybe I'll go craft that and try it out, but I don't quite see the purpose of it when I have what in my mind is something that's quite strong already and does something pretty similar. Paracausal Affinity, great damage perk. I mean, the new raid damage perks typically knock it out of the park. They have been for a while, so no surprise there. And then for the weapon sets themselves, yeah, Regnant's been quite nice. Did kind of piss me off because I spent a bunch of time farming for Adept Wendigo the week prior, the final week of Season 19, trying to stress over that Adept Wendigo with auto-loading holster, explosive light, and then we get a seasonal heavy grenade launcher that rolls with that, but I can enhance the perks. Like, well, all right, that was a waste of time. Whatever. Yeah, I mean, Root of Nightmare weapons, they're raid weapons. They've been solid for a long time now. I have all the faith in the world that repriced raid weapons are going to be solid, as well as new raid weapons. So not anything out of the ordinary for that extraordinary weapon set. Neomuna weapons, they're destination weapons. I mean, there's a few diamonds in the rough there, but again, by and large, I'm not really taking everything that I have there into a lot of activities outside of very specific cases. So some good PvP weapons in there, actually. The Philotactic Spirals, I'm still leveling that up, but I'm going to be very happy with the roll that I want to craft because I know it will perform quite well. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on just the weapons and the new perks and stuff. Good batch. Excited to see what develops.
So we did get some new gear. Unlike last season, we did actually get some armor. I think fully expected with it being a big expansion. But we also got some new weapons, exotic weapons. So Vex Caliber, which we've been talking about, that is both craftable and you get the catalyst. So it's got that kind of Revision Zero kind of vibe. We've got Vergla Curve, plus its catalyst. That's the seasonal. Saint's big favourite, the new kid on the block, Conditional Finality. Final Warning. Winterbite, been causing a lot of Telesto-style problems with Winterbite. Deterministic Chaos, and of course we got the catalyst for Quicksilver Storm as well. Did we get another catalyst this season as well, or is it just Quicksilver? Outside of these weapons.
Was Tuto Fox last season?
No, it was this season, right?
This season? Forget. If that was this season, it's a hit. Okay, whatever it was last season, it's still a hit. I don't know.
It's still a hit. Yeah. What was it? What was the catalyst? I gotta scroll.
Stumped us now. For armor, for hunters, we've got Soterachne's Facade, Speedloader stacks. For Titan, we've got Cadmus Rich Lance Cap and Abeyant Leap. And for Warlock, the Baladors, Wrath Weavers, and Swarmers. So I'll kick us off with the armor anyways. So I think Hunter's the weakest of the two. I'm not saying Soterachne's Facade is weak by any means, but I think it's, for me, I'm not really utilizing Grapple in order to get that Woven Mail. I'll rather use some of the fragments just to kind of combine into that. And I haven't really used Speedloader stacks. I think that's more of a PvP pick anyway. For the weapons, I think all of these have been big hitters. I don't think, maybe Deterministic Chaos is the weakest out of them, but it's not by any means the worst. It's not a bad exotic. I think it's just been up against some really high competition, especially Winterbite. Winterbite has been my big pick, not because it's been breaking a lot of the game, but the fantasy that, Chris and Rodney talked about the fantasy of a lot of these exotics, and I think Winterbite absolutely nails it with the sort of moving turret that shoots down and freezes a bunch of targets. So I'm loving Winterbite. Conditional finale, yes, that's been a big favourite of mine as well, but I'll pass you over to Saint, who'll give his additional thoughts on conditional.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such we were talking about this in the Patrons Lounge, little Patrons plug for you there on the podcast. But yeah, we were talking about this in the Discord this morning of just how this weapon, it will clear ads. It will deal damage to majors and, mini bosses. It will, it can do some great things in the Crucible. It just is such a strong weapon all around. It's unique. It sounds good. It looks good. It's effective everywhere. I mean, I don't know what more you could ask for out of a raid exotic, right? I honestly think that, I may put Vexcalibur after that in my ranking. Like we were talking about the mission, I just really enjoy using the weapon. It's got a Void Overshield, which plays into a class. I love. Quicksilver Storm becoming Strand was really nice. I think Deterministic Chaos is the only one that I, kind of to Court's point, I don't know if it's just been crowded out or if it's just not as good of a weapon because of the sequencing on it. I think I need to give that more of a chance maybe this coming season with our Void stuff coming up, and that has some kind of Void synergy there. Maybe it's time to give that machine gun another chance. Abandoned Leap is an incredible piece of exotic gear, and I can't imagine playing Strand Titan without it. And Candace Ridge Lancecap is the exact opposite, and I can't imagine why I would use it even when I'm on stasis. It's just kind of strange, and I'm just I like that the exotic armor team is like innovating, right? They're trying new things. It's an interesting activation condition. It's just not a play style that I'm super interested in. And it's just not a function that I'm super interested in. When I am playing my kind of like Stasis Titan build and all that stuff, I would just rather use Hoarfrost, and I think it's really hard to make an argument for Candace Ridge versus Hoarfrost on a class like that, especially with some of the, we could talk about upcoming changes to Stasis Titan, but we won't focus too much on that. I would love to see Candace Ridge Lancecap get expanded or buffed a little bit because it is interesting, just not something that I am going to be using. Impetus, Resident Warlock, how about you?
Favorite exotic gear here. It's probably going to be Verglaw Curve, actually. That is so strong. You can, the add clear plus now the shattering of stasis crystals to stun unstoppable champions. I don't think there were a whole lot of opportunities for this bow to really shine in in-game content right now, but I do think this is going to be one of our stronger, seasonal exotics, and the fact that it's also a primary means it gets excellent damage against minor enemies, and then also we can generate heavy bricks more frequently with the appropriate mods on your helmet. So I loved leveling this thing up. The catalyst was kind of a breeze to shoot through, which is pretty rare for primary exotics, but you could just do so much damage once you get the 5 crystals out and shattering them. So I love the stasis energy there. I want a reason to run stasis subclasses more in my in-games. I just need a surge, at this point for me to be running that. But once I do, it'll be Verglaw that I'll be using a lot. Conditional, Saint said everything that I want to say. Awesome. No notes, 10 out of 10. Quicksilver Storm, officially having that Strand exotic primary, really nice. Really, really, really solid weapon. And especially have it as an overload option as well. The little rocket coming in to kind of hit the overload champion after it's stunned has been a nice additional source of damage. The grenades do excellent damage as well. That feels like a lot of fun. Great fantasy. For the armor, Swarmers has been key to the build I've been running all season. I really don't have a lot of notes. I think it's really great. I've yet to put on the Balador's Wrathweavers. I understand what they do. I'm not interested in it at all, but Yeah, super exotic for a super that I almost never care about the damage of. I don't see the fantasy there at all. I mean, like on paper, I see the fantasy, but in game, I do not. I do not understand the fantasy. So, yeah, you're gonna sit in collections along with a lot of the other super exotics in the game. That's kind of my feeling on that. So, yeah, nothing really else to add.
Talk about, I am looking forward to the Salvation's Grip rework, because we did get that kind of insight that the same designer that made Vergla Curve is taking a little punt at Salvation's Grip, so it might be a kind of similar mini game. Which Verglass is definitely up there. I think to your point there, Saint, that you made, I think deterministic chaos, I think, just was pushed out. There's a lot of big competition, and it's a real shame, because it is a very interesting machine gun. To actually go and retrieve it, going back into Garden's play space, was very interesting as well. Kind of that backwards vibe that we've seen in Destiny 1. You retrace your steps. But I think we've some solid exotic weapons and some highlighted exotic armor as well.
Let's jump into it. Let's talk about Strand for a minute in general, because we've been talking about how all these builds kind of come into play. I feel like Strand has landed really well. We've talked about this a little bit in some prior episodes, but kind of crazy how well Strand landed out of the gate in PvP and PvE. Looking back on the season and kind of looking forward to our new aspects we've got coming out. How you guys feeling? Are you excited about the new aspects? Do you think it's going to change up your Strand playstyle from this season much?
I can't remember how long ago it was, but there was the first interview that Kevin Yanis and Chris Proctor did on Firing Range, and at some point, I can't remember the exact question, but Kevin, the question actually had been posed of, did Stasis come out the way that you guys wanted it to? And Kevin was very emphatic in his no. We know that it was going to be release busted, but he made some comment to say that we've learned our lesson, and should we have any future Darkness subclasses, they will not release in the state that Stasis did. And I think there was a very quiet, uncomfortable pause where everyone listening was like, yeah, okay, sure. I'll believe it when I see it. But Kevin was right. The abilities team did listen, and they put out another Darkness subclass that landed not too busted, but absolutely crazy, fun to play. I was terrified going into that first Trials of Osiris weekend when Immortal was up, because I thought it was going to be all Strand Hunters or all Strand Titans, but it was like, I mean, you'd see maybe one Strand subclass on the enemy team, or you'd have one on each team. Nothing like how Stasis launched, where it was just all dark blue, and whenever you pulled out the Ghost in PvP, it's 6 Stasis Hunters. Okay, yay! This is gonna be fun, and I'm Shadow Dive. Okay.
Hey, come on! Will there be at least one behemoth? Okay. Yeah.
That's of course. Yeah, sorry, the movement tech couldn't load in immediately, get a icy fist to my face as somebody's zooming across the map there. But yeah, I mean, just all props to the abilities team. You guys nailed it. It's a lot of fun to play, even though we don't even have a full kit for it, right? We're still getting aspects. We may still get some more fragments. It's still awesome with how much you have given us and how fun it is to play, and that there's an actual need for it. In the PvE side, the kind of more mobile, aggressive crowd control is just so strong. So yeah, Strand's the highlight of this entire expansion for me by a mile. It's not even close how much fun this is to play compared to just other aspects of the expansion. I mean, I love Strand on all 3 subclasses. How about you, Court?
Yep, no, all 3. I've tried them all on all 3. I think the big kind of worry going into this expansion or this season was your point about, how is this going to land? Not only in PvP, but in PvE, because it's like, maybe Bungie will be, they'll do the inverse where it's going to ship way too weak. But also in regards to Titan, there was a lot of community sentiment about Titan Strand being pretty like, oh, this is Fists of Havoc, but Strand.
It's just green striker.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they shipped it, and it's like, yep, this is actually a really solid class, and it's got its own little kind of fantasy. Warlocks have got the bugs that you can play around with and send to college and make them come back home and all that. And the hunters are all about grapple melee and that sort of power fantasy as well. But they've absolutely shipped these 3 subclasses really well. I don't really have much else to say because Impetus just kind of summed up my kind of thoughts there. Done a really good job, and I think hopefully this reaction kind of gets utilized for Stasis, because I absolutely agree that Stasis was shipped way too wild in PvP and it was nerfed down, but I think it's the pendulum swung in the opposite way, and we've been talking about this the last couple of episodes where Stasis is just not quite there. There's elements of Stasis on all 3 classes that do really well. One of my favorite classes is the Stasis Hunter class with Renewal Grasps, but beyond that, it's quite, one-dimensional. They've kind of lost their fantasy, and when you pair it up between Strand, it's just like, well, of course I'm going to pick Strand. Yeah, it's the new thing, and we're getting new aspects, but it's just, hopefully this is a kind of a lesson for the Ability Sandbox team to be like, okay, now we can focus a little bit on, like, not a Stasis 2.0, but a sort of uplift for Stasis.
This is kind of getting into our next point of build crafting 2.0, but when I look at like Behemoth Titan, I see, Hoarfrost builds and all that stuff that is like one mod or like one update away from being able to like have its place back in the meta. And I think that, we'll kind of talk about build crafting 2.0 here in a little bit more of a fleshed out way, but the ability for them to keep building on Buildcraft 2.0 and add in something like this elemental charge mod, right? That's allowing us to gain stacks of charge with light from our void breaches, et cetera, solar, I don't know, what do they call it? What are the solar ones called?
Fire sprites.
Fire sprites. Yeah. And then Stasis shards, obviously. I think that, we bring that mod back into the fold, maybe one more Stasis buff, and we could be right back into a really strong, Stasis builds with their ability to overload consistently right now, and their consistent interaction with those champions with overloads and unstops if you're using something like a dust field, which kind of gets into the new champ system, but they have such good control for those 2 champ types, and even for barrier champs too, right? Like Strand and Stasis are strong just against every champ type because of their kind of innate way that they function. So, I would love to see a little bit more. Really interested to see the way that the upcoming mods affect Buildcraft 2.0 and the champion system, because I feel like we have a good foundation, and I think that's just gonna keep getting better over the next 2-3 seasons as we go through the rest of this year. We talked about this a little bit on the show. But yeah, overall champ stuff, Court, I know this has been like super, point of focus for you this season. You've put out so many resources on this. Any other comments from you, or Impetus? Any comments on like champ system build crafting now that we were kind of full season into it?
So, Impetus, you made the point like Strand was your big highlight for like Lightfall in season 20. For me, it's the champion stun. That massive quality of life has fixed a lot of my grievances. And don't get me wrong, Strand was definitely one of my highlights as well, but the new champion stuns is just, I've been wanting this for a long time. And to get this big kind of question mark of why can't my ability sandbox stun these champions? Like what's avoiding them? To get that scrubbed off, it's just been like, this is great. I know, this Destiny 2 in its current position, it has some problems, but to see these quality of life changes go into the game and, work seamlessly 95% of the time, has just been a massive plus. And yeah, build crafting 2.0, to your points there, saying it's been another huge highlight. Just like considering Rodney talked about, they've been working on build crafting 2.0 since summer of 2021, which was back in Season of the Chosen, kind of midway through Beyond Light. That's how long we've came, and it's been great. It was a big upheaval. I think we're all kind of worried and anxious with the mods and a lot of mods disappearing, but they've shown that they're quite proactive and reactive when it comes to adding new mods, which we're seeing next season anyway. So yeah, those are my big highlights. Impetus.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's definitely been a success with the champion ability synergy. I mean, and we can see this on the artifact, right? Like we have fewer column 3, 4, 5 champion mods because we don't need them now. Like we've got them in our kits. We see this on the season 21 artifact mod. Is you got champion mods in column 1 and that's it. And then they've got space for so much more stuff later on that's super fun and exciting to play with. And yeah, I love that. I'm so happy about that. Oh, we've only got anti-barrier auto rifle. Well, I've got plenty of other excellent exotic weapons with intrinsic anti-barrier synergy that I can use. I've got abilities that work against that. I don't feel like my options are limited at all. It's just okay. Auto rifles are getting some love next season. Sweet. Let's try some of the new ones out, the retouch ones. I could understand why people thought maybe the new mod system is just basic, but I think considering the changes to the artifact, where they're now passive when you've unlocked them, and then especially next season when we get to just tweak individual ones, we don't have to reset the entire artifact. We still have some really strong power fantasies because the artifact is now just layered on top of whatever builds we make with the mods 2.0 system. So I think they kind of hit the nail on the head with just the basic mods that are available on our armor specifically. I'm of course excited for the 2 mods that are coming next season, but I do actually think that there's a lot of potential here. I'm very happy with how it turned out. Sure, we lost some synergies, some crazy fun mods that existed in Charged with Light or Elemental Wells and stuff. But again, looking at it on the whole, I think it's transitioned over quite nicely into this new 2.0 system. I'm having a lot of fun running artifact stuff, having it stack. We've got some highlighted options here, Bricks from Beyond and Volatile Flow, being there. That's been a lot of fun. We were kind of gushing over the Breach Wombo combo that's coming next season. Like I do think that mods and artifact mods are in a great spot, all things considered. Like there's still a lot of potential for build crafting, and at the end of the day, that's what keeps me invested in the game, is just trying out combinations of things. And I don't think that the quantity of options has gone down with this, and that's everything to me. So I'm very, very keen on this stuff. I'm very excited to see what the new artifacts for the upcoming seasons look like, and how that can tie into new exotic armor, new exotic weapons, and then new, of course, activities with new dungeons, new GMs, whatever comes our way in the coming seasons. So yeah, definitely with you, Court. This is my second favorite thing about Lightfall. Strand is number 1, but it's a very close second with the revamped mod system, build crafting 2.0 as they call it.
We haven't done a full review of the Lightfall sort of narrative and story, and we're not going to do that this episode anyway. And we'll save that for maybe a future season just down the line. But if we had the sort of narrative and the story beat from Witch Queen combined with the quality of life updates from Lightfall, I think we would have had an absolute banger of an expansion. We've got complaints right now. A lot of kind of things are still kind of up in the air of this is, where's this going? Where's the trajectory for some of these aspects, like the difficulty spike, or the raids that have Root of Nightmares came out and it's been a little bit more of a less challenging raid. But if we had that combo, I think we'd be in a really good spot. I was going to make a point about build crafting, which resonated from last week's interview episode with Rodney, where he said basically saying that the old version wasn't very friendly to new lights, and I think it wasn't very friendly to even more established players as well. So yes, it's more basic, but yeah, I absolutely agree with Impetus where it's it's not as while it's not as runaway when it came to like mass damage stacking and all that. It's a lot more friendly for new lights. It's more open for folks who can get into build crafting. And yeah, Rodney mentioned that as well. It's more friendly for those that are a little bit more interested into build crafting, and that's what like our shows come into, where we do go into a little bit more of the kind of breakdowns when it comes to armor or activity loadouts, and we've got some builds for you. It's a lot more easier for us to explain, like, okay, we don't have Well of Ions and all these elemental wells. As much as I miss them, as much as I miss Warmind cells when they were up in their massive potency, but they had to get kind of shunted out for a much more kind of friendly system. So, before we wrap things up, I think we should mention Root of Nightmares. So loot-wise, we've kind of already talked about it. We've got a comment here about the Adept weapon enhancement, but we'll save that to the very end. Mechanically wise, I think we've already done kind of a big Root of Nightmares review, didn't we? A few episodes ago, if I recall.
Yep.
But yeah, just as the big highlights when it comes to Root of Nightmares is, yeah, I think the big question mark is this going to be the difficulty for raids moving forward? Because if you make the comparison between Root of Nightmares and Vow of the Disciple, Root of Nightmares was quite low in terms of it being a difficult raid compared to kind of previous ones. And I'm not particularly... I'm trying to phrase this without being an elite when it comes to raids.
No, just own it, dude.
But to be honest, we do have free-to-play raids, which are always available, and you can go and play them right now and get crafted weapons and as well, with Kingsfall anyway. But yeah, I am not very friendly to the fact that Root of Nightmares launched and was pretty much beat super easy. Does that make me an elitist? Not really. I don't think so, because I still want these raids to be challenging. But yeah, we gave our big thoughts back then. That was my big highlight after kind of mulling over the last couple of weeks of the season. It's just been it is a very interesting raid. It's a very fun one. Like, if I just want to go and mess around with the lads, with 5 other guardians just messing around, then yeah, Root of Nightmares is the raid to do it. But I'm not really getting much challenge, which is pretty unfortunate. What's your highlights there, Saint?
I think, we also Kingsfall revamp was the last raid that came out before this, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was like probably my highlight raid race, right? It was long. It was a marathon. There were some key challenges. I felt like the challenge mode for like War Priest was just such an excellent encounter that required such insanely tight synchronization and damage. Despite the fact that maybe some of the later like Daughters and Oryx challenges were not very difficult, I feel like that made the raid, and I really enjoyed that. And I think that was part of the reason it seemed so short, is because like we came from Kingsfall revamp, and then we had Root of Nightmares, and those were just like so drastically different in terms of duration, and maybe you could say even in terms of difficulty. I'm not sure where people would think that Kingsfall revamp lands in terms of difficulty, and it is kind of difficult to maybe gauge those because there is so much of that you already know if you're a longer term player. But I think that was like perfect difficulty point, and I understand that I'm biased because like we had a good time and we did a good, had a good placement on that raid. But I think that definitely, like, that juxtaposition definitely made Root seem particularly short. And like the two things that I would say about kind of the meta conversation on that is I do think that it was too short. Raid could have been longer, race could have been more difficult. I don't think it's crazy to say that, right? Like it's supposed to be the hardest thing that happens in PvE like all year, every year. And that should have, that kind of should have seen, I don't know, maybe just like a little bit more of a challenge, right, for the community. Are people getting better at the game? Has the game been around for a long time? Does mastery increase every year? Yeah, for sure. And like I get that that's part of it, but race could have been longer a little bit overall. But I did, I still like the raid. Like I still think it's a good raid, and I think that saying that this is going to be the standard for like the rest of Destiny raids is like a little bit of doomsaying, right? I don't think that. I don't think that that's true. And I think if you look back at like the longer history of raids, like the difficulty and the length and all that stuff has been so varied over time that I don't think that it's fair to say that this is like indicative of what like the rest of the raids that we'll see in Destiny will be like, especially considering that without any like formal announcement from Bungie, the next new raid would be like the last raid in at least this like era of Destiny, which I imagine will be like quite the production, Yeah. So was the race short? Yeah. Could it have, maybe been a little bit more of a challenge? Yeah. Is it still a really good raid? Yeah. And like, I think that those things can all be true at the same time.
That's why I have a particular worry with the next new raid. It's because I don't want to doomsay and say, oh, this is going to be the for the new revamped raid and then the new Final Shape raid. But because this is the second last that we know anyway of the Destiny 2 era new raid, it's just like now the final raid of Destiny 2 really needs to kick out of the park. But yeah, no, I don't want to say it's a bad raid whatsoever, because Encounter 3 Planets Encounter is one of the best encounters I've played in a long time. It's just this weird kind of strange kind of vibe of planted within a raid, which is pretty kind of average in terms of time span and difficulty. But it
feels like an encounter lifted from VOW.
Yeah,
like it would fit perfectly within VOW, and that's why it's my favorite encounter. I'm right there with you, Gort.
Yeah.
Let's see. My thoughts on it. I'll say this: huge credit to the art and environment team for giving us another pyramid set raid where we kill a disciple and making it feel very different from the last pyramid-based kill a disciple raid. I mean, that's, when you look at the descriptions of these two things side by side, Root of Nightmares and Vow of the Disciple, you're thinking, really? Doing it again? Okay. But when you actually get in there and play it, it's very different, right? They're very distinct raids, and that takes a lot of skill. It's probably one of the coolest raid environments. I think it's probably my favorite. It's incredible to run through it and hear the ship breaking apart as the tree of Silver Wings grows, and then to also see the tree growing as you get through different vantage points. But again, mechanically, you're just connecting the dots, and I think we can ask more of the general raiding populace at this point in the game's history than just that. But yeah, I don't want to talk too much about that. I had a lot of fun. Of course, this is the first raid that I did during the contest mode, and I had a blast doing it, but that was also my favorite iteration of the raid, and I'm not going to be able to get to experience that again. And that's a huge bummer for me, is that the regular difficulty version, my runs have always been under an hour. The master version, I just kind of load in, do the challenge, and back out. I want to have a harder difficulty that I could do all the way through, that doesn't require extra challenges of my fire team. Just run it through on a harder difficulty. That's really what I want, because I love doing it on contest mode. It was so great. Great exercise, a great opportunity for me to really kind of see how far I've progressed as a PvE player, but I can't recreate that. I have to just wait for the next raid to come back with a contest mode to kind of get that same push. But yeah, that's Those are my closing thoughts about Root of Nightmares. I think we've all talked about it at length, and we kind of want to move on at this point. But yeah, we'll see what the reprise rate is that's coming in a bit, and then of course whatever the final shape may bring.
There is a little point here of commendations and Guardian ranks, but I feel like we've talked about this before. At least Impetus and we talked about this a few weeks back, like kind of mid-season. Do we have any other further points on that before we do our final point with the Adept Weapon enhancements?
No, I want to see how kind of these systems play out over a second season. I'm pretty negative on it, and if my thoughts change in the next season, I'll be sure to say so.
All right, so our last point before we wrap things up, it just sort of ties everything up in a nice loop as the interview kind of revealed a substantial update to weapon enhancements, but in particular when it comes to adept weapons. So the question is, did we use this, and what are our thoughts on the system? So I'll start us off. I haven't used it. I haven't enhanced anything so far because I just wanted to get a nice collection. But there was a case dejections roll that I did get. My DIM's not loading up at this moment, so I can't check. But yeah, I want to sort of experiment with this and just see how the system is going to evolve. Chris has said that they want to really start kicking this off for other weapons. It might be a little bit different for adept weapons that come from raids. He did say that it might be a little bit not the same as Root of Nightmares. The weapons team have said in the past that it's kind of a technical limitation, so it might be a different approach. But yeah, so I haven't used it. I don't know, Saint, what's your thoughts, and have you kind of enhanced any of the adept weapons?
I got yeah. I spent a lot of spoils to get a sidearm and an auto rifle, Michael's and Rufus, and I think I'm gonna enhance the Rufus just because it is a weapon that I really enjoy, and I think we'll see a lot of playtime this next season. And it's just kind of like a way to invest in a weapon that you really enjoy. I don't know if it's going to be any better than my crafted one, but it is kind of a nice way. Now I've got an adept one with enhanced traits, and I've got a crafted one with a couple of different enhanced traits on it. So I get a little variety, and like that's kind of a nice. And it's just like a bit of a flex, honestly. At this point, it's like, hey, I could check out my adept weapon that's got enhanced traits on it, and it's crafted because it's like it is functional, but it's a trophy. I definitely feel like.
Shiny silver trophy.
Yeah. And it's cool. It's better than Kingsfall, where there was like, why would I do this other than to get Kingslayer, right? At least now there is like a modicum of motivation to go get an adept weapon. And it is faster than crafting it if you are willing to grind in one way and have a horrible RNG. You can have another chance at RNG in a different way, and maybe you'll get lucky. I don't know. That's about all I got.
Yeah, I saved an adept Rufus with Pugilist hatchling. I wanted demo hatchling, but I thought, well, I'll hold on to it. Maybe we'll get an aspect or exotic armor for one of the 3 subclasses where, some sort of melee interaction gets a threadling or does something for threadlings, and then I can bust that out. But when I did do the Master Nezarec challenge earlier, I did get an Akazia's Dejection with Rewind Frenzy, which is not what I had recommended initially. I mean, I think probably Field Prep and then Paracausal Affinity would be what I would want, but I have the option to craft a regular version, so if I really want that combination, I could put that on there, but Rewind Frenzy is good enough for me, so I am going to try and level this up, which is why I put this comment in the script of, I've just started using this system, and I wanted to see if the two of you had already started working on the system, but I want to try it. I want to see how it feels to enhance an adept weapon all the way up. I do intend to enhance the Rewind and the Frenzy and change my barrels, mags, and masterwork, just so I can get a sense of it, and I think that, this roll will obviously be quite strong on this trace rifle, so... Yeah, it sounds like we don't have a lot of thoughts because we haven't really interacted with it too much, but good first step, though, I think we can say. I mean, there's definitely a reason to get adept weapons from Root of Nightmares, which, again, as Saint said, we couldn't really say the same for for the Kingsfall adept weapons, but Yeah, I can't wait to see this weapon enhancement stuff spread, hopefully to other adept weapons, and of course eventually down to the non-adept randomly rolled weapons. But good first step, right?
Yeah, if this is Foundation, which I think, Chris and Rodney talked about this as well, where it's a live service game, we're going to get a foundational level, and yeah, this is it. So I am looking forward to the future when it comes to not only weapon enhancement in general, but when it comes to specifically adept weapon enhancement. And yeah, a real shame, considering not only Kingsfall, but also Vow the Disciple. That's also got adept weapons. And I did get a submission, bait and switch subsistence, or bait and switch in demo. And yeah, kind of wish this was a system back then, because those weapons I still use a lot. Submission's still a favorite of mine. I use Deliverance a lot in PvP, and there's some real bangers with Kingsfall as well. But we're at a foundation level. We're at a start. Hopefully, we'll see this expanded in the future. Yeah. Any last thoughts on Season of Defiance?
I think that about does it.
All right. Yeah. Good episodes. And yeah, that is it for both episode 64 and season 20. As we said at the top of this episode, we'll be taking a short break to recharge our batteries before we come back swimming with more weapon breakdowns, activity builds, and science. Big thanks to our patrons and sponsors for keeping the gears turning, and you, the listener, for tuning in. The developer episodes and the podcast itself wouldn't be possible without your tremendous love and support over the last 15 months. And of course, a huge shout out to our audio engineer, Autodidactus, who keeps us sounding fresh every week. My name is Court. You can find me on Discord as Court and Twitter as Court Projects. Find my infographics and spreadsheet over on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns website, along with other applications to enhance your Destiny experience. Saint, where can we find you?
Yep, my name is Saint Kabr. You can find me by that name on Twitter, hanging out in the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord, or shooting sweet business relentlessly next season. Impetus.
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name in Discord and in Destiny, and as Impetus always on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks.